The first call reached the dispatcher at exactly 6:17 on a gray November morning. The voice on the other end barely sounded human. It was trembling, breathing heavily, almost whispering. I think something terrible happened. The dispatcher asked for the address. A quiet farmhouse on the outskirts of Briar Ridge, a fictional town tucked deep within Vermont's rolling hills. The caller refused to step inside. "There are footprints," he whispered. "And the front door is open." The line went silent. For a few seconds, only the sound of wind filled the headset. Then the caller spoke again. "I think they're all dead." Those words would begin one of the most disturbing investigations Vermont had ever imagined. Not because of what investigators found inside the farmhouse, but because of a single sentence spoken days later by someone everyone believed was simply grieving. A sentence that instantly changed the entire investigation. A sentence detectives would never forget. Asterisk, at least they stopped screaming. Asterisk. No one had mentioned screaming. Not publicly. Only the killer could have known. The Harper family had lived in Briar Ridge for nearly 20 years. David Harper was 46, a respected high school science teacher. His wife, Melissa, owned a small bakery in town. Their daughter Emma was 17, captain of the debate team. Their 12-year-old son Noah loved fishing and hockey. They were exactly the kind of family neighbors described with the same words. Kind, quiet, normal. Their farmhouse overlooked acres of maple trees that exploded into brilliant shades of orange and red every autumn. Nothing about their lives suggested violence. Nothing suggested enemies. Nothing suggested that before sunrise on a cold November morning, investigators would be searching every inch of their home for answers. Deputy Claire Morgan arrived first. Her patrol SUV stopped beside a weathered mailbox bearing the number 214. The driveway stretched nearly a quarter-mile toward the farmhouse. Fresh tire tracks disappeared into patches of melting frost. Morgan stepped out. The cold air stung her lungs. Everything seemed unnaturally still. No barking dogs. No farm equipment. No lights. Only silence. The front door stood half open. One porch light flickered. She called out, "Sheriff's office." No response. Her boots creaked across the wooden porch. Inside, the smell hit instantly. Copper. Smoke. Fresh coffee. The kitchen looked untouched. Coffee still sat inside a mug. Breakfast ingredients remained on the counter. Someone had started an ordinary morning, but they had never finished it. Then she noticed something else. A single bloody handprint smeared across the hallway wall. Her heartbeat quickened. She radioed dispatch. Possible homicide. Request EMS and major crimes immediately. She drew her firearm. Every room she cleared felt colder than the last. The living room. Empty. Dining room. Empty. Laundry room. Empty. Then, the staircase. Drops of blood climbed each step. Morgan moved upward slowly. Halfway up, she noticed broken picture frames scattered across the stairs. Family photographs. Vacations. Birthdays. Christmas mornings. Pieces of an ordinary life shattered beneath her boots. At the top of the stairs, everything changed. 3 bedrooms. All open. The first bedroom belonged to Noah. Empty. The second belonged to Emma. Empty. The master bedroom door hung crooked from its hinges. Morgan stepped inside. She stopped breathing. 4 bodies. 1 room. The walls told the story before the medical examiner ever arrived. There had been a fight. A desperate one. Furniture lay overturned. Glass covered the floor. Curtains had been ripped from the windows. Morgan slowly backed into the hallway. Her voice cracked over the radio. Confirm 4 fatalities. Even dispatch fell silent. Within an hour, Briar Ridge Road was blocked in both directions. State police arrived alongside detectives from the Major Crimes Unit. Forensic specialists photographed every inch of the farmhouse. Medical examiners documented every injury. Detective Ethan Cole reached the property shortly after sunrise. Cole had solved dozens of homicide cases during his 23-year career. He rarely reacted emotionally. But even experienced detectives paused inside the bedroom. Not because of the violence. Because of what felt wrong. Very wrong. Cole spent nearly an hour studying the room before saying anything. Finally, he looked towards Sheriff Linda Harris. This scene was staged. Everyone turned. Cole pointed toward the victims. They didn't die here. The room fell silent. Blood transfer patterns. Drag marks beneath the bed. Smears along the hallway. Tiny details invisible to untrained eyes. Someone had moved every victim after death. Why? That question became the center of the investigation. Forensic teams spread throughout the property. Fingerprints. Fibers. Hair. Footwear impressions. DNA. Every possible clue was collected. Outside, investigators discovered something unusual. Footprints. 2 different shoe sizes. One belonged to David Harper. The other, unknown. The mystery deepened further when analysts found tire impressions behind the barn. Someone else had visited the property during the night. But why? Neighbors gathered behind yellow tape. Everyone described the Harpers the same way. They were wonderful people. They kept to themselves. They helped everyone. No arguments. No lawsuits. No financial problems. No criminal records. Nothing. Detective Cole disliked cases. With no obvious motive. Because when motive disappeared, the suspect list became endless. Autopsies revealed disturbing details. David Harper had fought fiercely. Broken fingernails. Bruised knuckles. Defensive wounds. Melissa attempted to shield Noah. Emma appeared to have survived the longest. She suffered injuries consistent with trying to escape. The medical examiner delivered another surprise. The killer had been injured. Significantly. Blood recovered near the staircase belonged to someone outside the Harper family. Detectives finally had something. Unknown DNA. If it existed in any database, the investigation might end quickly. If not, they faced months of uncertainty. The Harper home quickly became national news. Television crews filled Briar Ridge. Reporters interviewed anyone willing to speak. Social media exploded with speculation. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some blamed a drifter. Others suggested robbery. Others insisted it had to be someone close to the family. Detective Cole ignored every headline. Evidence. Only evidence mattered. The first meaningful lead arrived from across the road. 74-year-old Eleanor Brooks remembered hearing something unusual around midnight. Not shouting. Not gunshots. Music. Soft piano music. Coming from the Harper house. Investigators searched the home again. The old piano in the living room remained closed. Dust covered every key. No one had played it recently. So, where had the music come from? Another mystery. Digital investigators examined nearby traffic cameras. Hours of footage produced one interesting vehicle. A dark blue pickup truck drove toward Briar Ridge at 11:42 p.m. It returned at 2:11 a.m. Its front license plate could not be identified. Its rear plate was covered with mud. Intentional? Possibly. The truck became investigators' primary lead. Meanwhile, forensic scientists identified the unknown blood type. Male. Approximately 30 to 50 years old. No criminal match. No military database match. No employment database match. Nothing. Whoever left that blood behind had never been arrested. 3 days later. Another breakthrough. Investigators discovered a torn fabric thread caught beneath Emma Harper's fingernails. Dark green. Heavy canvas. Likely from a work jacket. Combined with the unknown DNA. The investigation finally had direction. Then came the funeral. Nearly the entire town attended. Hundreds gathered beneath gray skies as 4 caskets rested beside one another. Family members cried openly. Friends embraced. Teachers struggled to speak. Detective Cole stood quietly near the back. Watching. Listening. Experience had taught him something. Killers sometimes attended funerals. Sometimes grief revealed more than interrogations ever could. One person caught his attention. Melissa Harper's younger brother. Nathan Collins. 41 years old. construction contractor. Divorced. Soft-spoken. Throughout the service, he remained strangely calm, almost detached. When another relative broke down crying beside him, Nathan gently placed a hand on the man's shoulder. Then he quietly said, "At least they stopped screaming." The sentence lasted only a few seconds, but Detective Cole heard every word. His stomach tightened. No investigator had publicly released details from inside the farmhouse. The media knew almost nothing. No mention of screams. No mention of the struggle. Only detectives, medical examiners, and the killer. Cole didn't react immediately. Instead, he watched Nathan. The man seemed to realize what he'd said. His face turned pale. He quickly looked away. The detective wrote 4 words inside his notebook. Asterisk, how did he know? Asterisk. The investigation had just changed forever. Detective Ethan Cole did not confront Nathan Collins at the funeral. Years of homicide investigations had taught him one simple lesson. People who believed they had escaped suspicion often made mistakes. People who felt cornered became careful. So instead of asking questions, Cole watched. Nathan stood with relatives after the service, shaking hands and accepting condolences. His expression never changed. He didn't cry. He didn't appear angry. He simply thanked people for coming before quietly leaving the cemetery in a silver pickup truck. Cole wrote down the license plate. Within an hour, investigators began building a timeline of Nathan's movements during the week leading up to the murders. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Nathan owned a small construction company that specialized in restoring old barns and farmhouses throughout Vermont. His business records were clean. He paid his taxes. He had no criminal history. But when detectives examined his financial records more closely, they noticed something troubling. The company had been losing money for nearly 2 years. Several large projects had been canceled. Suppliers were demanding payment. His business account was nearly empty. Credit card debt exceeded $80,000. The pressure had been building for months. Financial problems alone did not make someone a murderer, but they often explained desperation. Detectives interviewed Nathan the following afternoon. The interview room inside the Cedar County Sheriff's Office felt almost painfully quiet. Nathan answered every question politely. Where had he been the night of the murders? At home. Anyone who could confirm that? No. When had he last seen the Harper family? About 3 weeks earlier. Had he argued with David Harper? No. Did he know anyone who might want to hurt the family? Absolutely not. Nathan appeared calm. Too calm. Experienced detectives often noticed that innocent people focused on helping an investigation. Nathan focused on ending it. His answers were short, controlled, measured, as if every word had been rehearsed. Then Detective Cole asked a question that seemed unrelated. You mentioned at the funeral that at least they stopped screaming. Nathan blinked. I don't remember saying that. You did. I was emotional. Cole leaned forward. The media never mentioned screaming. Nathan looked away. I assumed. Assumed what? That something terrible happened. Cole remained silent. Silence often encouraged suspects to keep talking. Nathan finally shrugged. I don't know why I said it. The interview ended without an arrest. But Cole no longer believed Nathan was simply a grieving relative. Meanwhile, forensic scientists received the DNA profile recovered from the farmhouse. The unknown blood belonged to a single male. The profile entered national databases. No match. That disappointed investigators. Until another scientist noticed something else. The blood had been mixed with microscopic wood particles. Fresh pine. Construction-grade adhesive. Industrial dust. The same materials commonly found at renovation sites. Detective Cole immediately requested samples from Nathan's construction equipment. Nathan voluntarily agreed. His trucks, his tools, his clothing. Everything appeared clean. Almost too clean. Forensic teams spent 12 hours examining his workshop. Nothing. No blood. No fibers. No obvious evidence connecting him to the Harper farmhouse. Some investigators began doubting Cole's instincts. Perhaps Nathan's strange comment had truly been nothing more than grief. Cole refused to believe it. Another lead emerged unexpectedly. Investigators recovered deleted messages from Melissa Harper's phone. Most had been erased weeks before the murders. Digital forensic specialists restored them one by one. The messages came from Nathan. They weren't threatening. They were desperate. "I need more time. Please don't tell David. I'll pay everything back." Melissa's replies remained calm. "Nathan, you have to tell him. This can't continue. We're family." Detectives searched banking records. Then they discovered it. Over 3 years, Nathan had quietly borrowed nearly $300,000 from David Harper. Private loans. No contracts. No interest. David believed he was helping family. The money had disappeared into Nathan's failing business. The final message between the two men had been sent just 4 days before the murders. David wrote, "This has to end. I can't lend you anything else." Nathan never replied. The financial motive suddenly became much stronger. Detectives obtained a warrant for Nathan's cell phone location data. The results surprised everyone. His phone had remained at his house throughout the night of the murders. It appeared to clear him completely. Then Detective Cole asked another question. What if the phone never left? Investigators searched Nathan's internet history. Among hundreds of ordinary searches, one stood out. How accurate is cell phone location? Another search followed. Can a phone be tracked if left at home? The searches had been performed 6 weeks before the murders. Now the timeline looked very different. State police analysts reviewed highway surveillance footage again. This time they searched not for Nathan's truck, but for construction company vehicles. At 11:31 p.m., a white work van passed a gas station 12 miles from Briar Ridge. The logo on the side matched Nathan's company. The driver couldn't be identified. But investigators noticed something else. The van had a damaged left taillight. Nathan's company van currently had a brand new replacement. Repair invoices confirmed it had been replaced the day after the murders. Forensic teams examined the discarded taillight recovered from Nathan's workshop dumpster. Hidden inside the cracked plastic. Tiny blood droplets. The laboratory rushed testing. The DNA belonged to Nathan. The blood matched the unknown sample recovered inside the Harper farmhouse. For the first time, detectives possessed physical evidence placing him at the crime scene. But one question remained. Why had he been bleeding? The answer arrived through the medical examiner. During the struggle, Ethan Harper had likely struck the attacker with a heavy metal flashlight. The angle suggested severe injury to the attacker's left hand. Detectives quietly reviewed hospital records statewide. No one matching Nathan sought treatment. Then investigators checked veterinary clinics. One clinic remembered a man arriving late at night asking for supplies to bandage a deep cut. Security footage confirmed the customer. Nathan Collins. He had paid cash. With probable cause established, investigators arrested Nathan at his construction site. Television cameras captured the moment. Workers stood frozen as deputies placed him in handcuffs. Nathan said only one sentence. "This is a mistake." But the evidence continued growing. A search warrant executed at his home uncovered burned clothing inside a backyard fire pit. Most of the fabric had been destroyed. Not all. Forensic analysts recovered microscopic green canvas fibers. The same fibers found beneath Emma Harper's fingernails. Detectives believed she had fought her attacker until her final moments. Despite mounting evidence, Nathan refused to confess. Hour after hour, he denied everything. He claimed someone had stolen his van. Someone had planted evidence. Someone wanted revenge. The interrogation seemed to reach a dead end. Then Detective Cole introduced one final piece of evidence. The restored voicemail. Hidden in David Harper's phone was a message recorded 2 nights before the murders. Nathan's voice was unmistakable. "You've ruined me, David. If you don't help me, none of us will have a future." Nathan closed his eyes. For the first time since his arrest, he looked afraid. But before he spoke, his attorney entered the room. The interview ended immediately. Detectives believed they finally had their killer. They were wrong. Because 48 hours later, the DNA laboratory made a discovery that stunned the entire investigation. The blood inside the farmhouse belonged to Nathan. But another unidentified DNA profile, too small to detect during the first analysis, had also been recovered beneath one of the victim's fingernails. There hadn't been one attacker. There had been two. Hashtag Vermont family case. The chilling comment that stunned everyone, Part 3. Asterisk, this is a fictional documentary-style crime story. All characters, places, and events are fictional. Asterisk. The announcement from the State Crime Laboratory changed the investigation overnight. Detective Ethan Cole read the report twice before setting it down. Then he read it a third time. The first DNA profile belonged to Nathan Collins. There was no doubt about that. But hidden beneath the fingernails of 17-year-old Emma Harper, forensic analysts had isolated another, much smaller DNA profile. Male. Unknown. Not Nathan. Not anyone in the Harper family. For nearly 2 weeks, investigators had been building a case around one suspect. Now they had to consider the possibility that Nathan hadn't acted alone. Inside the major crimes conference room, the atmosphere shifted. A large whiteboard covered one wall. Photographs of the Harper family. Crime scene diagrams. Cell phone records. Financial documents. Vehicle movements. For the first time since the murders, Detective Cole erased one sentence from the board. One killer. He replaced it with 2 words. At least 2. Silence filled the room. If 2 people had entered the farmhouse, everything changed. The timeline. The motive. The movements inside the house. Even the staged crime scene. Investigators returned to Nathan's construction business. Every employee was interviewed again. Most had already been questioned once. This time, detectives focused on one specific question. Who worked closest with Nathan? Nearly everyone gave the same answer. A 36-year-old carpenter named Lucas Mercer. Lucas had worked beside Nathan for almost 6 years. Quiet. Reliable. Former Army engineer. Excellent craftsman. No criminal history. Neighbors described him as polite but private. One employee remembered something unusual. Nathan and Lucas had disappeared from work together the afternoon before the murders. Neither explained where they had gone. When they returned several hours later, both seemed unusually tense. Detectives obtained Lucas Mercer's phone records. Unlike Nathan, Lucas had turned his phone completely off that night. It disappeared from the network at 10:48 p.m. It reconnected the following morning at 7:11 a.m. To experienced investigators, that wasn't coincidence. State police executed a search warrant at Lucas's rural cabin. The property sat deep within Vermont's forests. A gravel road wound through towering pine trees before ending beside a modest wooden house. Everything appeared ordinary. Until forensic technicians entered the detached garage. Inside they discovered a heavy-duty pressure washer. Still damp. Cleaning chemicals. Recently burned trash. And something else. A pair of work boots. The soles matched the unusual tread pattern recovered outside the Harper farmhouse. The boots had been scrubbed clean. But not perfectly. Tiny traces of dried blood remained inside one groove. Laboratory testing confirmed it belonged to David Harper. Lucas Mercer disappeared before detectives could arrest him. His truck was abandoned outside a hiking trail nearly 30 miles from his cabin. Search teams flooded the forest. K-9 units tracked his scent for nearly 2 miles. Then, nothing. The trail ended beside an abandoned logging road. Someone had picked him up. Someone investigators hadn't yet identified. Meanwhile, Nathan Collins remained in jail. When detectives informed him Lucas had vanished, his expression changed for the first time. Fear. Real fear. Detective Cole noticed immediately. He placed a photograph of Lucas on the interrogation table. Where is he? Nathan shook his head. I don't know. Cole leaned forward. You looked scared. No. You know exactly why he ran. Nathan remained silent. Then he quietly asked one question. Did you find him? The wording caught everyone's attention. Not. Has he been arrested? Not. What happened? Instead. Did you find him? Almost as though Nathan expected something worse than capture. Digital forensic investigators continued rebuilding deleted files from Nathan's laptop. One folder had been erased using specialized software. Recovering it took nearly 2 days. Inside, they found architectural blueprints. The Harper farmhouse. Every room, every entrance, every window, even the basement. The files had been downloaded nearly 4 months before the murders. Detectives now believed the crime had been carefully planned, not spontaneous. Another discovery emerged from financial records. 2 days before the murders, Nathan withdrew $20,000 in cash. The money never reappeared. No deposits. No purchases. No explanation. Where had it gone? Detective Cole believed he already knew. Payment. Someone had been hired. But for what? Debt collection? Intimidation? Or murder? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A truck driver contacted police after seeing national news coverage. He remembered stopping at an isolated gas station shortly after midnight on the night of the murders. 2 construction workers stood beside a white work van. One appeared to have an injured hand wrapped in a bloody towel. The other argued with him. The driver couldn't hear every word. But one sentence remained clear. This wasn't supposed to happen. Investigators showed the witness photo lineups. He immediately identified Nathan. Then Lucas. Search teams expanded their hunt. 3 days later, a state trooper spotted movement inside an abandoned hunting cabin near the Canadian border. Backup arrived quietly. The cabin was surrounded before sunrise. Officers announced themselves. No response. The front door was forced open. Inside, Lucas Mercer sat alone beside a wood stove. He didn't resist. He simply raised his hands. During transport, he said only one sentence. I knew he'd blame me. Lucas requested an attorney immediately. But during routine booking procedures, investigators noticed something. A healing scar across the back of his left hand. Exactly where Ethan Harper likely struck the attacker with the heavy flashlight. Medical examination confirmed multiple fractures that had begun healing naturally. Lucas had never sought hospital treatment. Instead, he had splinted the hand himself, just as a trained Army engineer might. Laboratory testing produced another critical match. Paint fragments recovered from the Harper staircase matched paint transferred from Lucas's work boots. The odds of coincidence became microscopic. Now detectives possessed physical evidence placing both men inside the farmhouse. Still, neither confessed. The prosecution believed the case was nearly complete. Then forensic accountants uncovered one final secret. The $20,000 Nathan withdrew never reached Lucas. Bank records showed Lucas had recently paid off nearly every personal debt he owned. But not with cash. With a cashier's check purchased by someone else. The purchaser's identity shocked investigators. It wasn't Nathan. It was David Harper, the victim. David had secretly helped Lucas financially months before the murders. That meant Lucas had no obvious financial reason to kill him. The entire motive collapsed. Detective Cole stared at the evidence board. Nathan had motive. Lucas had physical evidence. Yet something still didn't fit. Why would Lucas murder the very man who had rescued him from bankruptcy? Late that evening, Cole returned to the crime scene photographs one last time. He enlarged a picture of the kitchen. Then another. Then another. Finally, he noticed something every investigator had overlooked. A family calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. One date was circled in red. The day after the murders. Written beneath it were 3 words. Meet with attorney. Cole's pulse quickened. He immediately called detectives. What attorney? Hours later they had the answer. David Harper had scheduled a meeting to revise his will. Someone in the family already knew. And if those changes had been made, millions of dollars would have gone somewhere very different. For the first time, detectives realized the murders may never have been about debt alone. They may have been about inheritance. ## Vermont family case. The chilling comment that stunned everyone, Part 4, Final. This is a fictional documentary-style crime story. All characters, places, and events are fictional, The discovery of the meeting with the attorney transformed the investigation. For weeks, detectives had believed the murders centered on financial desperation. Nathan Collins owed money. David Harper refused another loan. The motive appeared obvious. No, it wasn't. Detective Ethan Cole immediately contacted the attorney whose name appeared in David Harper's calendar. The attorney, Richard Lawson, agreed to meet investigators before opening his office. Lawson carried a thick file marked Harper Estate, Confidential. He hesitated before opening it. I suppose confidentiality no longer applies. Inside was a revised will. It had never been signed. David Harper planned to sign it the morning after the murders. The changes were dramatic. Under the old will, Melissa Harper's younger brother, Nathan Collins, would inherit a significant portion of the estate if the immediate family died together. Under the revised version, Nathan inherited nothing. Instead, the money would establish a scholarship fund for local students pursuing careers in science and education. Nearly $2.8 million would have disappeared from Nathan's reach overnight. Detective Cole stared at the document. So Nathan knew? Lawson nodded. He was here 3 days before the murders. What happened? They argued. What about the inheritance? Lawson remembered every detail. Nathan demanded another loan. David refused. Then David revealed he intended to remove Nathan entirely from the will. Lawson recalled Nathan standing abruptly. His face had turned pale. Before leaving, Nathan looked directly at David and quietly said, "You'll regret this." That statement became the final piece establishing motive. But detectives still couldn't explain Lucas Mercer. Why would he risk everything? Cole requested another interview. This time, Lucas agreed. He looked exhausted. Days of hiding in the wilderness had taken their toll. His injured hand remained wrapped in fresh bandages. Detective Cole entered the interview room carrying only a folder. No accusations. No raised voice. He placed the unsigned will on the table. Lucas looked down, then closed his eyes. So you know. Cole said nothing. After nearly a minute of silence, Lucas began talking. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Those were his first words. He admitted Nathan approached him weeks earlier. Nathan claimed David planned to destroy his business forever. He asked Lucas for help scaring David into changing his mind. Lucas refused. Several days later, Nathan returned. This time he offered money. $20,000. Lucas still refused. Then Nathan revealed something else. He knew Lucas's daughter needed expensive heart surgery. Insurance wouldn't cover everything. Nathan promised enough money to save her life. Lucas broke down. He agreed, but only to frighten David. Nothing more. On the night of the murders, they parked the construction van nearly half a mile away. Nathan already possessed a spare key to the farmhouse. Melissa had given it to him years earlier for emergencies. They entered quietly. The plan seemed simple. Wake David. Demand he restore the inheritance and continue supporting Nathan financially. Leave before dawn. Instead, everything collapsed. David recognized them immediately. An argument erupted. Melissa entered the kitchen. She screamed. Emma rushed downstairs. Noah followed. Within seconds, the quiet confrontation became chaos. David fought fiercely. Ethan Cole paused, realizing the reports had mistakenly used Ethan in earlier notes when the son was actually Noah. In Lucas's account, it was Noah who tried to defend his parents with a heavy flashlight. Nathan panicked. He struck David. Melissa lunged toward her children. Lucas tried pulling Nathan away. Instead, Nathan attacked again. Lucas described the next several minutes through tears. I kept yelling for him to stop. Nathan didn't. By the time the violence ended, innocent people were dead. Detective Cole listened without interrupting. Why move the bodies? Lucas wiped his eyes. Nathan said police would think someone else did it. They carried the victims upstairs. They cleaned what they could. They burned clothing. Nathan wrapped his injured hand. Before leaving, he looked around the silent house and said, "They're finally quiet." Lucas remembered those exact words. Detective Cole realized something chilling. At the funeral, Nathan hadn't accidentally revealed hidden knowledge. He had repeated his own words from the crime scene, only slightly differently. At least they stopped screaming. Lucas signed a full confession. He agreed to testify. Investigators immediately confronted Nathan. The interview lasted nearly 6 hours. Nathan denied everything. Then prosecutors played Lucas's recorded statement. Nathan's confidence disappeared. Still, he refused to confess. Until Detective Cole quietly placed one final item on the table. A tiny fragment of Melissa Harper's wedding ring. Forensic technicians had discovered it lodged inside the damaged sole of Nathan's work boot. There was no innocent explanation. Nathan stared at the evidence. Minutes passed. Finally, he spoke. It was supposed to be one conversation. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "He ruined everything." Cole answered calmly. "No, you did." Nathan lowered his head. For the first time since his arrest, he cried. Not for David. Not for Melissa. Not for Emma. Not for Noah. For himself. The trial began 11 months later. It lasted nearly 7 weeks. Jurors heard testimony from forensic scientists, digital analysts, crime scene experts, financial investigators, neighbors, and first responders. The prosecution reconstructed the entire timeline. Every movement. Every phone record. Every drop of blood. Every fiber. Every mistake. Lucas Mercer testified for 3 days. His emotional account left the courtroom silent. He accepted responsibility for participating in the crime and acknowledged that agreeing to the plan, even without intending murder, helped create the tragedy. Nathan Collins never testified. His attorneys argued the confession from Lucas was unreliable. The jury disagreed. After 11 hours of deliberation, Nathan Collins was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, burglary, and evidence tampering. Lucas Mercer was convicted of conspiracy, burglary, and multiple homicide-related offenses based on his participation and was sentenced according to his role and cooperation with authorities. As the verdict was read, no one celebrated. There are no victories in cases like this. Only accountability. Months later, the Harper farmhouse stood empty. The windows were boarded. The driveway had begun disappearing beneath weeds. Neighbors still slowed as they drove past. Some remembered David coaching science fairs. Others remembered Melissa's bakery. Children remembered Emma's kindness. Fishermen remembered Noah waving from the creek each summer. The house no longer represented violence. It represented everything a family had lost. Detective Ethan Cole visited one last time before retiring. He stood at the edge of the property as snow quietly covered the fields. His partner asked him whether solving the case brought peace. Cole looked toward the silent farmhouse, then answered honestly, "It brings answers." He paused. But answers aren't always the same as peace. The Harper family's estate was eventually used exactly as David intended. The unsigned will could not legally take effect, but after the criminal case concluded, surviving extended family members reached an agreement to establish the Harper Family Education Foundation, honoring David and Melissa's wishes by funding scholarships for students across Vermont. Each year, young people pursuing careers in education, science, and public service receive assistance through the foundation. Their names are announced at a ceremony attended by teachers, neighbors, and former students. Before every ceremony begins, a moment of silence is observed. Not for the crime, not for the investigation, but for a family remembered not by the violence that ended their lives, but by the kindness with which they lived them. And for Detective Ethan Cole, one sentence from the investigation never truly faded. It wasn't the confession. It wasn't the verdict. It wasn't even the evidence. It was the quiet remark spoken at a funeral by a man who believed no one would notice. At least they stopped screaming. In the end, those 5 words didn't solve the case alone. But they made detectives ask the one question that changed everything. How could he possibly know? Sometimes, the smallest comment is the loudest piece of evidence.